So I put out my video the other day about how you should do a lot of reps in your sets. And I thought that I was being pretty mild about it. I was like, hey, you can still do what you're doing. Just this is something you could try. You should try it out. But man, people did not like that shit at all. It was not well received. The good thing about this, though, is that I have difficulty knowing what to talk about, from, and I could just, you know, leech off all the negative comments and pick one to just be my next video. Be great. This is a great format. I appreciate the help, guys. My favorite comment was whoever said approximately, I disagree because I've been having good success with a low amount of reps and high intensity. Cool. I like this comment because it was respectful. Didn't just claim that, he was like super expert and that I was fucking retarded. It's just like, based on my experience, this doesn't make sense to me. Cool. That's fair. But also, this comment in particular spoke to me because it makes it clear that there's a disconnect. Based on my experience, this comment would make no sense for me to say ever. Like I get that most people don't like my experience is my experience. Other people don't have my experience. But that answer doesn't make sense to me because in my opinion, a 5 rep set could never match the intensity of a 500 rep set. It's not even in the same galaxy. But this didn't seem like a hateful comment. It just seemed like he was stating his disagreement, as a civilized adult. Which makes me think that everybody probably, it made it clear to me that this is probably a common misunderstanding. I'm not saying that you should do, you know, I imagine most of the people who watched the last video didn't watch any of my other uh, videos at all, probably, but my other philosophy videos, they didn't watch them all in sequence. They just saw that one. I am not condoning like fluff and pump, as it's commonly known, where you just get some easy little weight and go through the motions however many times, barely feel it. You're like, you know, oh yeah, I did 100 reps and I was like 6,000 reps from failure because I was holding a, 3 pounds plate on the machine or something. No, it's not what I mean when I say do a large set. So in this 500 rep set, you wouldn't just go through the motions 500 times. It would be a weight where, you know, you should hit failure somewhere in those 500 reps. And it might be like rep 490 something, or it might be rep, 100 something. And then you figure it out for the remaining 300, whatever the hell reps you have. You know, if you're doing some kind of chest press, okay, you have some grip, you're moving, and you hit failure. Okay, you shift to mostly like your same motion, but now you're pushing with your triceps. You're figuring it out. Okay, then your triceps start to burn out too much. Okay, you're gonna lean forward a little bit. Now you're using your shoulders. You're not worrying about it. You're gonna get it. You hit failure again. Now you're gonna start doing like some kind of rocking motion. You're using your abs. You're getting it up. You're doing whatever you can to hit your goal. And because the weight is lighter, you can do this. You can kind of shift how you maneuver the exercise. And even if you shift it to mostly your triceps, mostly your shoulders, mostly your abs, mostly your whatever, it doesn't matter. Based on the machine and based on what you're doing, sometimes it would be surprising how you could figure out how to move some weight. But every single one of those reps, after your chest initially hits failure, after your first whatever, that chest is still going to be doing its goddamn best to get those reps. It's still going to be firing as much as it can on its empty gas tanks, as I was talking about, to finish that set. That's what a big set is to me. It's a completely different idea from anything that you've seen. And this is going to lead me into the actual topic of today's video. Something I talked about that I want to talk about in my other videos, and I'll probably have multiple videos on this subject, but one of the comments, more than one of the comments, but one of the comments specifically was like, "You're wrong. You should read some papers." I don't know if that's the exact quote from the comment, but it's pretty close. It's basically what the comment said. We're going to talk about science and how science is stupid for training. I don't think we're going to do a little bit of review here, but again, most people don't watch all of my videos. They just watch whatever one they end up on. I don't think that this is a solved game. Okay? Nobody really knows anything about the best way to train. You could go the little cop out thing with well, everyone's different and it probably works differently for everybody. And it probably does to some degree, but even without that nuance, I think that this is not a solved game at all. And I don't think that science is going to let you ever understand what you should do. I think it's a red herring even. It's like going to pull you away from what you should do. And this is probably a lot of videos on, because I can think of several reasons for why science is not good in this field. We're going to talk about, leeching off that other comment, which was a good comment. The first one that I was talking about, fantastic. Okay, we just have different perspectives, different experience levels in the gym. We just have different things that we've, to come to different conclusions. Okay, that's fine. But we can use that as a little bit of example coming up for why. Science isn't really ever going to tell you the right way to do this stuff. Okay. Analogy. Let's say that there were some scientists who wanted to find out things about lions. Okay. Optimally, they would, gather up a bunch of lions and do studies on these lions, right? Lions are hard to come by. But something that's everywhere, pretty easy to gather up, some cats. So we'll get some cats, and we'll just use that as a parallel for lions in our studies. If we understand cats, we'll probably understand lions well enough. Right? Okay. So they gather up some lions, cats, gather up some cats, and some scientist is like, okay, let's research how lions hunt zebras. You know, why not? That sounds like a fun study to do. We'll do that. I got this zebra from the zoo. My buddy works at the zoo. He can give us a zebra. They get a zebra, and then they just gather up 10,000 stray cats or whatever. And then they just get the zebra in a little cage, and they just start throwing cats one by one at the zebra to see how the cats, fight the zebra, and, deal with the zebra, and then eat the zebra. And at the end of their study, they're like, groundbreaking conclusions, guys. Turns out lions actually can't eat zebra. That's just, it's not like, this whole time we thought the zebra was some shit that lions actually eat, but after our rigorous studies, turns out actually there's a fair bit of the time that the lions will die in combat against the zebras. Even. This would be fucking stupid. This would be retarded. Those scientists would be dumb as hell. Right? Everyone would fucking shame them out of ever being scientists again. Basically. But this is what scientists do all the time with training, with this. Same shit. And I'm sure those of you with a triple digit IQ following along already, you kind of understand what I'm saying here. And they have their immediate retort. And you're like, well, you're just saying you shouldn't use general population to understand athletes. Okay, so we'll just have studies that only use experienced lifters. No, in my analogy, we're already using experienced lifters. Cats are carnivores, they know how to hunt and stuff. It's just like the lifters know how to go to the gym and do a set of 5 to failure or something. I've already taken this into account. What you're talking about, grandma, just trying to walk around without hip pain and, studying that that's like a hamster or something in this analogy. Experienced lifters, and, this comparison, are cats. And you could have a study of 1,000 cats, 10,000 cats even, and you would be lucky to have one lion in that study. The lions are the people with a champion mindset. And they're rare. And what works for these people is not going to be what works for the common man or the common athlete, the common person who goes to the gym. Whatever you want to call these people. And it's not that there's not something magical about the biology of the lions. We're switching to people now. The people with champion mindset, there's not something magical about their biology that makes it what will work for them won't work for the other people. It's that the other people will never be able to rise to doing what is actually optimal. So if you study the regular people, even the experienced lifters, because you could be in the gym for 5, 10, 20 years and not have that mindset. It just means you've been in the gym for that long. It's not it's not about that. What you're going to find out by running all of these studies with your sample size of 1,000, 10,000, whatever, doesn't matter. And most sample sizes actually in these kind of studies are shit. But even if you have what is considered a good sample size, most of them probably don't even have a single actual lion. And that's assuming that the study is even testing something that was relevant. Because maybe, But we're going to jump to this original comment as a perfect example of a study that would have different results with cats and with lions. If we had a study where we were going to compare sets of 10 to sets of 100, my hypothesis being that sets of 100 are superior. Okay. If you were to run this study, I don't want to say no doubts, but I have very little doubt that the set of 10 would come out superior in the studies, even if you did the studies multiple times. That doesn't mean that the set of 10 is superior, even if you get that result 1,000 times in a row. That just means the set of 10 is superior for these people. And because lions are so rare in the population of cats, you're never going to find a study that favors what is actually optimal for the lions. Ever. 10 years from now, science still won't know what is optimal. Okay, and you're like, well, wouldn't it be the same? No, it wouldn't be the same. What you're actually testing for when you're testing normal people is you're finding what is successful at this what is most successful amongst the strategies with low difficulty. Maybe not a good way to say that. Shift analogy for a second. I have some League of Legends merchandise, sitting around. Video games. There's other video games that exist. I'm sure most of you probably played some. But in League of Legends, and probably in other video games as well, there are multiple characters. If you play fighting games, it's probably true with that kind of thing too. There's this concept of like a skill ceiling and a skill floor. Okay? People who don't play games, people who do, you probably, like if you were one of these triple digit IQ watchers and you play games and you've been following along so far, you immediately kind of probably are seeing the parallels here, what I'm talking about. If you don't play games or something, if you're not following along, there are characters in video games or whatever that have low skill floors. This is the minimum amount of aptitude or skill or understanding with the game or whatever that you need to be successful on that character or using that strategy or whatever. And then there are high skill ceiling characters or strategies or whatever, which are the ones that have the most potential. But if a noob, somebody who is shit at the game, somebody who doesn't, hasn't put in 10,000 hours into that game, starts out on one of these characters, they're probably going to do awful. They will definitely do worse on these high skill characters than they would on the ones where you just hit the same button over and over and are still kind of relevant to your team or whatever. Right? Training is kind of like this. There's going to be low skill floor training styles, and then there's going to be stuff that basically nobody can do because of ability or mindset, which is what I'm talking about here, that is definitely more effective, even if 1% or even 1% of 1% of people are able to do that. And whatever these strategies are that only 1% of 1% of people can do, you will never have a study tell you that that is the answer. Duh. In the a comment that I've seen multiple times, multiple videos, whatever, is this thing about 30 reps. Like there's been a lot of studies, and hypertrophy might increase up to about 30 reps and then it cuts off, or overall muscle strength and growth is consistent within 5 to 30 reps or whatever. Like I've seen a lot of variants of this comment and this sentiment. There could be a lot of reasons for this. They might just not test. There just might not be very many studies with large sets. But my initial gut hypothesis is just that most people don't have the pain tolerance, the motivation, the discipline, the something. There's probably several ways to get there, several different factors that could get you to this end goal of being a lion. But the vast majority of people don't have any of these traits high enough to adequately push a set beyond around that range to failure. It just hurts too much for too long. I don't want to hate on the commenter who was like, I've been trying lower reps, high intensity, because just different experiences we've had in our lives. But the amount of intensity that you can get out of a triple digit set, okay, to put some numbers on this kind of thing, if you go to failure on a set of 5 or a set of 10, you're only going to really struggle with the last rep or 2, maybe. You're going to be in the failure zone for somewhere between, like if you do a set of 5, you might be in the failure zone, the part that actually hurts, for 0.5 to 5 seconds, somewhere in that range, 1 to 5 seconds. I just liked all, saying 5 multiple times there. If you do a set of like 500, you might be in failure for 5 minutes. Shit, you might be in failure for 20 minutes. It depends. It's totally possible that you hit more failure and pain and intensity in one set like this, like what I'm talking about, than a lot of lifters will see in an entire year across every set that they do. Now, if you get a study and you expected, and you had some hypothesis, we're going to test 5 rep sets versus 100 rep sets, 10 rep sets versus 100 rep sets, 5 rep sets versus 500 rep sets. The bigger the difference here, the more what I'm saying is going to be true. The first day, when you go in there and you figure out what weight these people are going to be pushing around for this study, you would be lucky to have one participant pick an adequate weight. Not even close for the large set. Because it's hard enough to get people to inflict unbelievable agony on themselves for 5-10 minutes with some obscure goal in the distance. You know, like a scholarship for some sport, being world champion, any of these things. It's hard enough. Most people will not do this even for like millions of dollars. Okay? You're not going to get normal people to do this for a study. And you can extrapolate this idea to hundreds of different aspects of training. Science in this world will never tell you what is actually optimal. It will only tell you something that can be successful at the bottom level. That's it. That's all it can do. And in my other video where I was saying, spoiler alert, I don't believe science is good for this field, anecdotal evidence is better. The reason for this is if you find one person who was a champion, a world champion, or, a super top level athlete, anything like this, and you ask them, if you can get them to truthfully talk to you about, everything, you at least have one lion then in your study. You are pulling accurate information, even if the sample size is only one. That's a lot better than 10,000 cats fucking tossing at a zebra. You're never going to get anywhere doing that. Never going to find the truth. Have a good one.